Oh, you're an Aiden. But they're doing slichas, no?
When it tries,
You have earpods.
maybe in the yeah. It's okay.
Okay. All right. Geweldig. Gan Eden, Chevre. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Chav Beis. We are learning how Torah comes through Chachma of Atzilus, and this comes down and ultimately is revealed here in this world. Actually, to correct something that I said yesterday, the Alter Rebbe in Igeres HaKodesh in Igeres Hey explains that when we learn in Kabbalah that Chumash is connected to the world of Asiyah, it actually means that Chumash is a gilui of a higher level of Torah, and therefore it's able to come all the way down to the world of Asiyah. Mishnayis is relative to Chumash, coming from a little bit of a lower level, all from Chachma Datzilus, and therefore it's able to come down until Yetzirah. Gemara comes down to the world of Bria, and Kabbalah remains in the world of Atzilus. So we're going to continue to learn more Agadata on the exaltedness of Torah and how that expresses itself, as we'll be learning, in various ways of godliness being revealed in the world. Actually, we're going to be learning on Daf Chav Beis in the Agadata that we have to still learn. It's mamish going to be very much connected to Igeres HaKodesh Yud Aleph, Laskil Chabina, as we'll explain. We're going to come back to the machlekes in the Mishnah between the Tanach and Rabbi Yehuda, whether when one uses this Pasei Beroi system, whether you can enlarge the area to as large as you want, as long as you add more boards, not to have gaps of more than 10 amas, let Rav Meir, or gaps more than 13.3 amas, let Rabbi Yehuda, or according to the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, that the maximum area of the Pasei Berois is only up until and including Beis Osayim and not more. Similar to the din of a karpef, we will actually define better the concept of an area that shohukaf ledira. What exactly does that mean? With various beautiful nuances. And God willing, we're going to start the new Mishnah, Daf Chav Beis Amud Aleph, which is really the machlokes tanoim, whether we say that asli rabim, asay rabim umavatli mechitzas or not. Notice when you have halachic mechitzas, but there's traffic that's going through the mechitza area, does that nullify those mechitzas, which is shittas Rabbi Yehuda, or does it not? We're going to have a sheet of Rabbi Yechanan that says that Eretz Yisrael ein chayavin aleha mishum reshus harabim. Initially understood that Eretz Yisrael is surrounded somewhere by natural mechitzas, rendering it at least not a reshus harabim biblically. But the Gemara is going to challenge that ultimately by asking if that will be the case, then nowhere in the world should be a reshus harabim, because ultimately everything is surrounded by oceans and by mountains. And therefore, the Gemara is megala that what Rabbi Yechanan means is that what were to happen if a Reshus Harabim road is so steep that it's difficult for people to walk on it? Does that in itself, does the fact that there's a difficulty walking on that, do we say that that location is no longer a Reshus Harabim? Which is what Rabbi Yechanan really meant to say. And the logic behind it is, let's remember what we learned in Masechta Shabbos, that Reshus Harabim is all learned from how we traveled in the desert, called Diglei Midbar. In the Midbar, even though really maybe before we were there were very tall mountains and there were steep declines, but because of the Anani Akavod, when we got there, the roads were relatively flat. So the travel there was easy. And therefore, if something is so dissimilar to the way the desert was when we were there, by it being very steep, even though it's 16 amas wide and it's Shitas Rashi Tosfos, it's servicing Kiyotzim Mitzrayim, it loses its status of a Reshus Harabim. And then that is going to lead us into the final topic on Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis, that Lashitas Rabbi Yehuda, that holds of the concept of Asei Rabim Umavat L'Mechitzta. We'll learn the sugya today. Question will be, what happens if the Rabim doesn't have an easy way going in that area? If there was some impediment, if it's not convenient for the Rabim to go there, will that change the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda or not? That will be the final topic. Hebrew, let's start. We left off on Daf Chaf Aleph on the base, 2 lines before the bottom of the Amid. And the way we are explaining the Gemara is that Torah comes from Chachma Vatzilus. And then it has to enclose itself. And in other words, when you have something infinite, Chachma is the keli to something infinite. And it's being packaged in something finite. So even though we get the package, we get something finite. But now our avodah, which is Torah Shemal Pes, to unpackage it. And how much will we be able to take out? No end. There's no limit to it. And therefore it says, now we're focusing by on a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, that Kitzu Kivutzoisav Taltalim, that his locks are wavy. I know there are many Maimorim on this. Not that God forbid there's any type of body or body form to the Eibishter, but this is speaking about the godliness of the world of Atzilus, that there are locks, that means that they're relatively long hair and they're wavy. So Amar Rab Chizda, Amar Mar Ukva Min Lamed, we learn a lot in Hasidus that the whole concept of hair, and really that was the Idra from the Rashbi, both the Idra Rabbah and the Idra Zuta, that hair represents the ultimate Tzimtzum, because hair is coming from a place where there's the most chayas in a person, let's say, is in one's brain, and out of there comes Sa'arois, Sarois. Right, the Rebbe Bechlal never said a sin. The Rebbe said it mitashin, because when you pronounce it mitasin, it's a bigger tzimtzum. It's too much tzimtzum. Sha'ar is a gate, even though it narrows, but at least it's big. Sa'ar is there's a little opening inside the hair, through which a very small amount of chayas comes. So coming back over here, Melamed sheyesh lidros al kol koitz v'koitz, that from every little tip of a letter in the Torah, you know how much is in there. Believable. That in there you have tilim shel halachas, you have heaps upon heaps of halachas. Then it says weiter in the pasuk in Shir Hashirim that shechoiros ka'eref, literally that the hair is black like a raven. What does that mean? Who has the koyach to connect to the level of the Torah in a way that they are able to extrapolate from the koitz, the bligvul, the godliness, which also will express itself in there being a ribui atzum. Arucha min eretz, uruchava min yam. That's Torah Shemal Peh. Of Torah Shemal Peh, who is able to connect there? So Chachma is bittul, a yid that has bittul. Who can reach this high level of Torah that from one kreutz they can see in it the bligvul, the mid of chavbeis shemashkim umarav aleim lebeis hamedrash. Now it's gavaldik chavretz. It's like a zadrush because shachris means shechoiris. Verstehst? It's shchoiris ko'erev. Oirev is arvis. Shachris is arvis. Yechap how it fits into the words. Now, someone who comes early to learn and stays late to learn, why is that bittul? I'll tell you why that's bittul. Because by nature, and you'll identify with this, either you're a morning person or you're a night person. That's the way God made us. So it's first of all, Yasher Koyach, if you are a morning person and you use that Koyach and freshness to learn Torah, well, that's why God gave us that Koyach, to learn Torah. If you're a night person and you learn at night, we were created for that. You're using your greatest moment of the day to learn Torah. But for a Yid to learn both Shemashkim Umariv, then you're going against your nature. Both, whatever nature you have, not only are you using that, but you're also going where it's not your nature. That bittul gives us the possibility of connecting to the ultimate level of Torah, and we will be able to access the bligvul, the godliness inside the words. Rabbi Alman, again, another remez of shchoides ko'erev, that's really speaking about how we should be dedicated to the Torah. If someone learns to their exhaustion, that their complexion becomes darkened. Many times people don't sleep. You should see they call it in English, you have black bags under their eyes. In other words, it's the concept that we have to, when did we just learn this? Adam kiyamas ba'ayel, right. Rava Amar, Now this chevre, without Hasidus, it's very difficult to understand this. The words sound extreme, that you know with who will be able to reach that level of Torah. If someone behaves without heart towards his family, like a raven in nature, a raven doesn't feed his children. We say this in Daven, they call out to God. That when he was going to yeshiva, and his wife tells him, how can you go to yeshiva? Who's going to support our children? Your children. What do you mean you're going to yeshiva? Amar Lasa, he responds to his wife that mi shalemai kurmei ba'agma are the wild vegetables that grow in the marsh, for which anyone can just go and pick. Are they depleted? There is enough that we can live off without any effort. Now, the concept of being an achzari to one's children, obviously, we're learning Agadah, should not be taken literally, but Ashreinu that we have Chasidus. The Alter Rebbe in Igeres Yud Aleph, in Igeres HaKodesh Yud Aleph, Lahaskil Chabina. It's mamash moidedik. When you learn that letter and you read this Gemara, it fits together. The Alter Rebbe is explaining, the Alter Rebbe there is addressing how people should be able to get over the bitterness that many people have when they're, God forbid, lacking in the basics of Bnei Chayim Azayna, which are basic necessities. So the Alter Rebbe writes over there, like, Eloizu HaDerech, Yishkon Oir Havaya, he speaks about how a Yid, beginning with Amunah, believing that the world is being created every moment, Yesh Me'ayin. And in this letter, Yud Aleph, the Alter Rebbe says, Ayin is Chachma Datzilus. And that means that God, Chachma Datzilus, is here every moment creating. That means that we are living in the presence of God. The Eivishter is here, creating the world every moment. Being that Chachma Datzilus is completely beyond our comprehension, it's Chachma Datzilus. So when something looks to us as painful, it's not only for the good, but it is good, because in the presence of the King, there is only good. This is a very high level of Amunah, which means that a person accepts that no matter what's happening, it is mamish good. And therefore, their desire and their pleasure is only from Ruchnius. From even the basic Gashmi's Dikka necessities and responsibilities, they have a munah that it is exactly the way it's supposed to be. That's mamish. When you learn that letter, it fits into this whole concept that a Yid who wants to connect to Chachma Datzilus has to live in that world. And Ubemela, there is no desire and there's no pleasure from anything physical, and everything the way it is, the way Mishlimu Kurma Ba'agma, that people begin to realize that as things are, Bigashmias, it's exactly perfect. And Ba'ayin Shom in the letter, and this gives a lot of light to this piece of Gemara. The pasuk, now we're going on the pasuk in Devarim, and this is all connected to the sugya that godliness is coming from a very high level, from Chachma Datzilus, and it's coming down into the world, and it's coming down to the world into Torah. And this also explains a little bit of this next piece of Gemara. Why is it, even though the Mishnah says that Ein Lanu Yisurik Tzadikim, but we'll see over here that the good that's coming for Tzadikim, it appears to be delayed, which is why many times Tzadikim have a very hard time now. Later it's going to be good for them. There's a certain amount of time that it takes from something to come down from a very lofty level until it manifests in this world. Umeshalem l'soinav el panav, right? This is towards the end of the parsha of Eschanam, that Hashem repays those that hates him to his face, laha'avidoi, to destroy him. Who is repaying whom, to whose face to destroy whom? What's the pshat? That to his face is not God repaying the wicked to the wicked's face, but God is repaying the wicked against the will of God, so to say. This whole concept we also learn in Tanya of giving b'derech achorayim. It's like a person who's carrying something and it's towards their face and they don't want to be carrying it. In other words, God gives the Rishoyim for some good that they do, they're going to get rewarded. And Hashem rewards them. But it's against the pnimius dika will of God, because God doesn't want for the Rishoyim to continue. Why does God reward them? Because they earned it. But ultimately, by them getting the reward sooner rather than later, this in itself brings about their destruction. Because at a later point, when all of their good was, so to say, paid up, so now they don't exist anymore. Then when it says weiter, lo ya'acher l'soinoi, that he does not delay payment, but in other words, it's quick, but dafka to the ones who he hates. So it's interestingly that the Rishayim get rewarded quicker, that tzaddikim get rewarded later. Amar Rabbi that the l'soina for the lo ya'acher, to the enemies, to the people that are misbehaving, they get repaid right away for the good. Everyone does some good, they get repaid right away, which is why it looks like that the wicked are prospering, because some good they have, and right away they get rewarded. But tzaddikim gemurim, since their reward, let's learn again, it's coming from a much higher level, it's coming from the pnimius, so it has to come down from a much higher level into this world, so therefore it manifests here in a later time. Kaviyachal, the farther we are from each other, the longer it takes for me to get from here to from me to you. So something that's coming from a higher level of godliness, until it comes down over here, there's a longer delay. And behind Rabbi Levi, this is mamish the last pasuk in Voschanan. Asher nechim etzaf chayim la'asoisam, hayoim la'asoisam, v'loy l'macher la'asoisam. In other words, that in the next world, being that the Rishayim already got their payment over here, and in the next world, there won't be an opportunity again to do the mitzvahs the way we do them in Dolus. So now is the time to do it. Hayoim la'asoisam, and only l'machar l'kabel scharim. No, it's tzaddikim don't get their reward right away. Rishayim get it, yeah. To Rishayim we say that lo ya'acher, that there is no delay, but that's only l'shainoi. And why is there no delay again? Because it's coming from a lower level. It's not coming from the pnimius. If it's coming from a lower level, so it's already closer to this world, so it manifests quicker. And now we understand the meaning of the pasuk that erech hapayim in the Yud Gimel Midos. Erech hapayim means that Hashem is slow to get anger. The pshat. Now the problem is that af means anger. Apayim is double, two faces. It should have said erech af. Hashem is patient. He's slow to get angry. No, so the Taich is the Gemara. Don't Taich af anger. Taich. Erech apayim letzadikim, Hashem is slow to show his face. The face that Hashem wants to show to tzadikim, that's coming, like we mentioned, from the highest of levels. So until it manifests, it takes time. So tzadikim can be doing all the greatest things in the world, and they don't see right away it being, so to say, reciprocated in their lives. And to the Shoyim, it's the opposite. Hashem is slow to show his anger to the Shoyim. So there's a delay, but what's being delayed to whom? It's the opposite. To tzaddikim, the goodness is being delayed. To the shoyim, their punishment is being delayed. And that's why we have a lashon abim erech apayim. There's a beautiful sikh of the Rebbe about this concept. That which comes from farther takes more time to come down. And the Rebbe therefore explains that we do find that there were unique instances, right, that tera nikra v'ani ena, that there was something unique, that even though that they were getting up sagilui from a high level in the world of Atzilus, and normally it should have taken time, but there's a certain way of davening. When a yid becomes as a batel b'mitzias, batel like Eved Avram, the fact that he didn't have his own identity, that in itself made him a keli. He was so batel, he was already there. So therefore, right after he davened, God already responded, as we have in the other few exceptional cases as well. But normally there's a delay if it's coming from a high level. Okay, coming back to the Mishnah, in the beginning of Perek Sheni, where we had the Machlokes Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu malachim shakol v'dvari. What was the Machlokes? Now that we are being soymech, even with the Rabbanan, on Pasi Biro'os, the Tanakama says, as long as the gap doesn't exceed Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, whatever the Shita is, make it as big as you want. And if you distance the double boards from the well that's in the middle, so the gap is getting bigger, so add another board. Or extend the Pasibirois. We had that discussion in the Gemara. But Rabbi Yehuda gave a limit. The limit he gave was no, only ad beis osayim, v'ad bechlal. The rule of beis osayim is said by karpet. So let me just repeat the din of karpet. Midoy raisa, when you have a halachically partitioned off area to the shus hayachid. and you can carry in a Rishus HaYachid. It's not called Chaytza. It's not Daladamas B'Rishus Orabim. You're carrying Mizavis Lizavis. The Chachamim said that if you have an area, it's called Shaloi Hu Kaf Ledira. It wasn't partitioned off for residential purposes. Residential purposes doesn't mean only for human living. A well of water, l'chura, is also called residential because I'm going to be spending Shabbos there, me and my animals. I got to feed my animals. Shaloi Hu Kaf Ledira means that many people had storage areas that they hardly went to. It was outside the city. And if it was fenced off, so the Chachamim said that if it's up until and including Beis Osayim, it's also a Rishus HaYachid. But if you enclose such an area, which is Shaloi Hu Kaf Ledira, and it's larger than Beis Osayim, that's called a Karpeif Midrabanan, you can't carry it. So that's what we had in the Gemara. That was Rabbi Yehuda, that he considers a Pasei B'Rois similar to, limited like the Karpeif. So first of all, the Gemara says, they asked in the yeshiva, that when Rabbi Yehuda spoke about Beis Osayim, boy, upasim ka'amar, or dilma boy v'loy pasim ka'amar. What are we asking? Very simple. Guys, these bodies of waters, I know that in all of the pictures that we looked at, we had a little circle. Nishtazay pashit. Many times the bodies of water or the springs were very large, Now, if you have a body of water, that the body of water itself is larger than Beis Osayim, then according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can't section it off. Because now the question is, what happens if the body of water is exactly Beis Osayim? We also learned in the Braisa, in the bottom of Daf Chav, in the bottom of Daf Yutes, that the minimum that you have to leave, L'Kula Alma, is enough space for Roisha Veruba, which is 2 amas from each direction for a cow to be able to go in there. So there's the question. If the base, isn't Beis Osayim including at least a minimum 2 amas on each side? Or if you have a body of water, that the body of water takes up the whole Beis Osayim, you are still able to put in Pasei B'Rois and add on each direction 2 amas, and that is good Rabbi Yehuda, because the well itself is not larger than Beis Osayim. That's the boy. In other words, the Gemara is going to explain both sides. According to Rabbi Yehuda, people know that you can do Pasei B'Rois for an area larger than Beis Osayim. But if you're going to look at this body of water, you're not going to focus on the 2 amas that you left on each side. You're going to see, this is good. This water is Beis Osayim. By Dilma, no, Adam if a person won't only look at the body of water, if they're going to see, Rabbi Yehuda, that you allow the person to build a Pasei B'Rois, even though the waters themselves are Beis Osayim. So you're looking at the Pasei B'Rois and the halachic mechitzas that you make in your mind, the lines between these boards, it's an area larger. You're going to think, maybe you could partition off an area more than a Beis Osayim, when you may not. L'Kula Alma, a Karpeif may never be bigger than Beis Osayim. So Tashema says in a Braisa, what is the closest you can bring the Pasei B'Rois to the well? So we learned this also in the Mishnah, which means you have to leave on each side of the water at least 2 amas. So the sheet of the Chachamim, as we had in the Mishnah, as we have also here in the Braisa, there's no limit. Rabbi Yehuda argues and he says, no, only up until and including Beis Osayim, then muter. But if it's just Beis Osayim, then it's asur. Rabbi Yehuda compares it to a din of a karpeif. And the Braisa continues now the conversation that Omru with Rabbi Yehuda, the Chachamim challenged Rabbi Yehuda, hold on. This is not Shaloi Hu Kaf Ledira. When you do something in order to help you feed your animals, that's called dira. For example, a dir or a sahar, we explained this when we learned the Mishnah, different types of corrals that people made for their animals, or a muktzah, which is someplace in your back, a back lot, or your chatzir. All of them is called Hu Kaf Ledira. And everyone is moided that as long as they have halachic partitions, afilu beis chamishos koren, afilu beis aseres koren, shemuter. Why would this be different? So Amar Lahem Rabbi Yehuda responds, I'll tell you why. Because when you have a Hu Kaf Ledira, and you can circle off a mile, that's because you are using modified mechitzas. Here, you're only using pasim. Don't forget that it's a big heter. We're only having double boards. Now, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you are allowing 13.3 amas of an opening. So it's huge openings. It's not a pirza. It's paratz menu ba'ala oimed. For that, you also have to put a limit. All this guys we already had before. Now, how does this answer our boya? Because now look at the third shita. If you have a square boy, that's exactly the size is mutter. In other words, that if you have a boy base osayim, you could put passive erois, elama. He's moidu to Rabbi Yehuda that you have the limit of Beis Osayim. The whole water pit took of Beis Osayim. He says, Beseder, then only give the minimum around the water pit or the be'ed, and the minimum is 2 amas on each side. In other words, Rav Shimon and Elazar holds that you could add, the boy can take off the whole Beis Osayim, and yes, it's going to end up that you'll have on each side an additional 2 amas. Now that's the last sheet. So the Gemara L'chayda says, "Hamid the common Hashem and Elazar boy v'lei pasim mechlal that Rabbi Yehuda L'chayda is the machmer." That's what it sounds like. That Rabbi Yehuda boy pasim common. It means according to Rabbi Yehuda, if the boy itself takes off the full base of sign, you can't do anything over there because you won't be able to have the minimum 2 amas because you already used up all of your space. So the Gemara says, "No, v'loihi." And not only is Rabbi Yehuda not machmer, Rabbi Yehuda is the makel. Here we're going into another topic. Remember when we learned about a mavui, one of the differences between a mavui and a chatzit is it rectangular, mavui, orkoi is more than achvoi, and a chatzit is a square. That's the topic over here. Not the same, just similar. Do you have to have the exact squareness? Rabbi Yehuda holds, boy, also pasim ka'amar, you can add 2 amas on each side. How is he different than the Tanach Rav Shimon ben Elazar? The Gemara says, I'll tell you how. Look at the first words that Rav Shimon ben Elazar said. He said, Beis Osayim, Beis Osayim. That's a whole new din. Arich v'katan. According to Rav Shimon ben Elazar, you can circle off a bird that's Beis Osayim only if it's Arkoi Kirachboy, if it's a square. Rabbi Yehuda is lenient. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the shiur of the Beis Osayim need not be squared. And if you have a boyd, as long as the boyd in its totality, the rectangular, is not bigger than Beis Osayim, yes, you can put pasibirois, and yes, you can now add on each side, not more than the minimum, but you can add the minimum of 2 amas on each side. Yes, says the Gemara. Now that we're speaking about hukaf ladira, Klal Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Hukaf ladira doesn't have to mean are you inside a roofed area or not? Nothing to do. Kol avir, even if you are in an open-aired area, out there, no roof, if it was enclosed lidira for residential purposes, like we just learned, a dir and a sahar, which are areas in which people put animals, there were no roofs on it, or a muktzah, your backlot, or a chatzir, even though it's open to the skies. Dira doesn't mean it doesn't mean an apartment. It means for residential purposes, which includes needs for people and their animals. Then afilu beis chamishas koren or beis asoras koren muter. There's no rabbinic restriction. It goes back to the normal din. If it has halachic mechitzas, whatever they are, it's called a reshus hayachid. However, even if you have a dira means a home, a place with walls and a roof. But if it was built le'avir, to service an open-aired area, for example, burganim, shabasades, you have these little huts. A hut is a 4-walled or 3-walled with a roof. But why did they build a hut? Not for people to make use of indoors. It's just to give shade to the shomer. Why is a shomer there? Not to live there, but to be a shomer in the orchard. That's called loy hukaf ladira. And therefore, well, guys, don't forget, even shaloy hukaf ladira, you could carry, if it's not bigger than Beis Osayim, which covers mistama almost all huts, correct? It's not 5,000 squared amas, which is Beis Osayim. But we have that limit. Beis Osayim muter, the moment it's yasir mi Beis Osayim, even though it has a roof, it's edira, but it's shaloy hukaf ladira. In other words, it was created to service an outdoor area, which is not ledira, then it is also if it's more than the Beis Osayim. And that is called generally the din of the karpeth, which Chazal said that if it's larger than 2 sa'ah, even though it has bona fide mechitzes, midrabanon, you may not carry dinoi like a karmos. Okay, this Mishnah, guys, is the most fundamental Mishnah coming back. We quoted this, I think it was on the above, when we spoke about the challenge of city ERUVIN. We mentioned that even though a Tzuras HaPesach is definitely better than the Lechi and the Mavui, we also mentioned that cities never have a din of a Mavui, because guys, don't forget, a Mavui has to be square. Mavui has to be rectangular, even if it's taka, an area that's servicing 2 chatzeros or more, and each chatzed is servicing 2 batim or more. If it's just a square, it doesn't have a din of a mavui. No one relies today on a koder or an alechi, but the koder tzuras HaPesach is the best thing in the world. So we already spoke out, based on this Mishnah, Daf Chav Beis, that even if you have real mechitzas, if the mechitzas don't impede the flow of traffic, this is the Mishnah that machlekes tanoi. Whether we say that loy asi rabim umavatla mechitzos, or whether we say that if asa rabim, if people are going through the mechitza area, then the mavatla mechitzos. We're going to see how this applies now to the pasei berois. Okay, says the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer im hoyer derech reshus rabim mafsakton. Guys, imagine you have the well, you have the corners, you have the boards at each corner. And the public thoroughfare is not going over the well. People are not falling into the water, but it's going in that area. So, we're making these imaginary mechitzas that we're saying that from one, each pas goes out, we learned 6 tfachim, 1 amma. The other one goes out 1 amma. And then we have this halachic connection between these two, but people are going through it. So says Rabbi Yehuda, they break the mechitza. If people go through it, you may not take water out of the well. And therefore, what do you have to do? Yisal kenel mitzdadim. Move it to the sides. Now it can go both ways. Move the pasim to the sides. Move the road. You can make on Shabbos, we do this in Fruma neighborhoods. People cannot travel through. You change the flow of traffic. But if you don't change the flow of traffic on Shabbos, then the rabbim are mevatel the mechitzas. So holds Rabbi Yehuda. Chachamim no ein tzarich, because Chachamim hold that lo yosa rabbim umevatel mechitzas. Amachlekes tanoi. Now let's go to the Amoraim. Who did they pass in like? Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yechanan and Rabbi Lazar, the Amri Tavayu, Kan hoidiyacha koichen shal mechitzos. Here, this is obviously lechachamim, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, the mechitzos are not that strong. Fakir the rabbim, they break the mechitzas. But here you see, l'chachamim, the power of the mechitzas. So the havamina is that when they made that statement, what they really meant was kan, and they hold like the chachamim. Says the Gemara, that can't be. Rabbi Yechanan can't be. Because for Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chan, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Yerushalayim mamish has mechitzas. You're kidding, Yerushalayim is a walled city. Elomah, there are roads that go through Yerushalayim. Now, one of the beauties of having a door, we spoke about this earlier in the Masechta, especially if it's the stages. There's a door that's ra'ui to be closed, then there is a door that actually is closed at night. So Rabbi Yechanan says that that if not for the fact that the doors of Yerushalayim's old city is closed at night, then it would not be a Reshus HaYachid. Wow. 1 second. How can Yerushalayim be a Reshus HaRabim? It's not because you close the doors at night. By the way, nowadays, do they close the doors at night? Of course not, in the old city. But I'm saying, if not for that, then it would be a Reshus HaRabim. Favos, because he must hold that Aser Rabim Umavatla Mechitzas. Beautiful. And look inside the Tosfos, coming back to our Tzuras HaPesach, right? It's 1, 2, 3, the 4th Tosfos from the top. Because over there, our Mishnah is speaking about Pasei Berois. Yerushalayim is to have a Rechav Sheish Esvayamis, and there are no Pasim. Note, by Pasei Berois, you have over there an opening of 13 and a third. Reshus HaRabim is much bigger. So the Rabbim that breaks the walls of Yerushalayim is a much bigger Rabbim. And over here in our Mishnah, the Chachamim are saying that the Pasei Berois are not broken. But I'll tell you why, because the Pasei Berois is a less of an opening, right? Even like Rabbi Yehuda, we only tolerate 13.3. Or the Shus Rabbim by definition means 16. So Tosfos says, no. That I know that Yerushalayim has a wider opening, but Yerushalayim has something that Pasei Berois doesn't have, and that's the Tzuras HaPesach. So we compare a wide road with a Tzuras HaPesach to Pasei Berois. Pasei Berois is narrower, but Yerushalayim is wider, so to begin with it's worse, but a Tzuras HaPesach should have resolved it. And if Rabbi Yochanan would have passed like the Chachamim, Deloy Asar al Mechitzes, then it should not have been mevatel the walls of Yerushalayim, even if you wouldn't have closed the walls.
Rabbi.
Yes.
What about the fact that Yerushalayim is majority walls? Where does that come into play?
Amazing. All it shows you how much Rabbi Yochanan holds that Asar Rabim u'mevatel mechitzes. You're making the point even better then. And therefore the Gemara says, yes, Rabbi Yochanan does not pass like the Chachamim. Rabbi Yochanan is saying, wow, look at Shitas Chachamim. But Rabbi Yochanan holds, exactly, Danny made a good point, that Asar Rabim u'mevatel mechitzes, you know how strong that is? That when you have a city that's circled with walls all around, there's a road that mafulish, that this is important, these nuances. In other words, it's a road that in Yerushalayim, and not only there is an end, you can go in from one side, and you can go through and go out from the other side. And if not, now the fact that they close the doors at night, that changes it. But if not for that, even though there's a Tzuras HaPesach, the fact that the Rabbim go through it, they're mevatel the mechitzes. Okay. Now says the Gemara, coming back to the Machlokes Tanoi, l'chu'ura v'rami de Rabbi Yehuda, v'rami de Rabbanan ad Rabbanan. De Tanya, how many times, Baruch Hashem, are we learning this brayso that Yosef al Kain Amar Rabbi Yehuda? Not only according to Rabbi Yehuda are you allowed to carry under an overpass, because the edges of the overpass is pitikra yored v'soisim, walls on two sides, and it's roofed. According to the Tanach Rabbi Yehuda, you don't even need a roof. If you have two homes, you own two homes, one on each side of the street, and you want to carry from one home to the other on Shabbos, all you need to do is what's the Havamina? This is important. Now we already know the maskana, then you won't chap the kasha. The Havamina is that Rabbi Yehuda holds you need to have three walls. And therefore, so when you have a house here and a house here, and the street goes in between them, that's only two walls. So the lechi that Rabbi Yehuda is speaking about must create a wall. Since there is a lechi, it's as if it closes off the street. But Rabbi Yehuda says that when you put up the lechi, then you could carry. The Rabbim is going through it. In an hour Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says that Asi Rabbim u'mevatel mechitzes. Based on the Havamina that according to Rabbi Yehuda need to have three walls, how do you explain this brayso? There's no more three walls because the Rabbim was mevatel, the lechi or the kaina. And the same thing will be in the Chachamim. So Amrullah, the Chachamim told Rabbi Yehuda it's not good. The reason why the Chachamim hold to that is because the Chachamim hold, let's go, think about a kasha, that Rabbi Yehuda, and the kasha the Rabbanan ad Rabbanan. In our Mishnah again, Rabbi Yehuda holds that Asar Rabim u'mevatel mechitzes. In the Braisa, based on the Havamina that Rabbi Yehuda says you need to have three walls, he doesn't say they're mevatel mechitzes. In our Mishnah, the Chachamim holds it does not nullify. It doesn't nullify. And here, l'chayda, they're holding that it does nullify. Can't use it. Says the Gemara, right, the first white line, no. Rabbi Yehuda, like kasha, Rabbi Yehuda holds that you only need two walls. And when you have two walls, you got yourself a Reshus HaYachid. That's different. So since you already have a Reshus HaYachid based on the two walls, Hassan, the Ika Shtei Mechitzas Ma'al Yisa, so that's why you can carry in between the houses. By the Pasei Berois, my friends, there isn't a single wall. Don't forget that. You have double boards. You don't have a single mechitza. How are you making a mechitza? Because you're making a halachic wall from the edge of one board until the other edge of the other board. If the street thoroughfare is going through it and people are traveling, then there's no longer a mechitza. You don't even have the two mechitzas ma'aliyas. Same thing with the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan bananami loikash. Now, the Rabbanan, first of all, they don't subscribe to two walls is enough. But let's say the following, that the beauty of our Mishnah is even though you don't have physical walls all around the well, but each direction has a halachic wall because you have at least 4 of these double posts. So on each side, north, south, east, and west, on each side of them, you have 1 amma here and 1 amma there. So there is some mechitza on each direction. But over here in our Mishnah, Ika, Sham, Arba Mechitzos, the highway goes through it, and Rabbanan hold, Lo Yosanabim, Umavat Mechitzos. But over there, in the case of the Varaisa, there's only 2 walls. If the walls are let's say, are north and south, east to west, there is 0. Now, I'm not saying that Lechi is 0, but Lechi is not a pas. We're saying that a pas is at least 1 amma on each side. That's different. Hassan, Lechi, Sham, Dal, Mechitzos, only 1 Lechi. And there, only a Lechi, even the Chachamim hold that the Rabbim is completely Mevatel, the Lechi, or the Kohen. Okay, now we have this enigmatic statement of Rabbi Yechon. Eretz Yisrael, ein chayav and oleh mishum reshus harabim. The mamish thought he meant that in the whole Eretz Yisrael, it's not a reshus harabim. And we mentioned this a while back. B'chlal, the Gemara is going to say this on Amud Beis. Any area, if you just go far enough, you're going to hit an ocean, you're going to hit mountains, right? L'chayda, you can argue that every very large area is circled with mechitzas. But then the problem will be, then there's never a reshus harabim anywhere. Yosef Ravdimi v'kamal is repeating the statement of Rabbi Yechanan. Amalei Abayil Ravdimi. I don't understand what he's saying. My Tama, why? Why did he say that? Is it because? Let me introduce one interesting din. Hope we have enough time to finish all this, and that is we just quoted the Machlokes Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda whether 2 walls make a mechitza. The Chachamim hold that 2 walls don't make a mechitza. But now let's learn a nuance. When the walls are opposite each other. Like in the case of the Braisa, you have a house, and the street goes in between. L'chachamim, even midoiraisa, it's not Yerusha Sayachet. But whenever you have 2 walls that touch each other perpendicular, midoiraisa, likula alma, it's called in that corner. It's called a Yerusha Sayachet. Makes sense because no one is traveling through that corner. Okay, through it, they might be going circular. Yeah, I hope that was clear. So he thought, Tzur is in the north of Israel, and it's surrounded by very rocky heights. So the rocky heights, they incline, it's like a wall. And umachtana de goder, mahachisa, machtana de goder, we're not going north-south, we're not going east-west, we're going north and east. We're not even going into the sea now. We're just saying that there are certain natural, either tremendously steep ascents by Tzur, and there's a very deep descents in the area called Gader, and these areas basically corner. Eretz Yisrael has that natural barrier all in its north, and Gader, this deep slope going down all in its east, and therefore, biblically at least, we're not saying that you can carry it's a carmelis, but on a biblical level, even the Chachamim will hold that these types of 2 walls that go perpendicular, if that is what Rabbi Yechanan is saying, that the whole Eretz Yisrael is not a Reshus Harabim, that can be. Because it's not around an area. You're speaking about around a country. First of all, Babel Nami, you have Pras Mahachisa, Vidiglis Mahachisa. And anyone who knows a map will know that the Pras, that the Tigris or the Tigris and the Euphrates, they touch each other. In other words, there's also a large area of land that you can argue that in a perpendicular direction, there are 2 walls. And furthermore, once we allow not an area, even today in a large city, it's like a huge shetach, those who make city ERUVIN, but at least it's circling an area. Once you start using natural barriers, so the Gemara says, the Kula Alma, any place in the world should be biblically Reshus Hayachid, because any area surrounded by the oceans. Makev Ukayanus. Ukayanus doesn't have to mean the Mediterranean. Any large, take a look at the globe, and you can argue this whole country has in the north here, and the west there, and the east there. There's an ocean here and an ocean there. And that's
Rabbi,
yes.
We're mentioning oceans as a barrier, but isn't ocean only work if there's like a descent of whatever it is?
Let me add to that. So when are we worried that Hella Sir time we had that before That is if you need to use its wall, Danny, near the shore. So even if there's a slope, but if there's going to fill up with seaweed, it's going to break the wall. But if you go a couple of miles in the Pacific, you have to know, and you're going underground, somewhere out there, there's going to be a big descent in the ocean floor. And why don't we count that? Somewhere you have it. Eloma, again, the Gemara doesn't draw the line, but the concept is Gavaldik. You can't use around large areas of land natural barriers to say that's a mechitz. Now, where do you draw the line? I don't know, but you can't do that. So what did he mean? So therefore, this is what Rav Dimi asked Abaye. And Abaye then added, it must be Dilma. Rabbi Yechon wasn't speaking about Eretz Yisrael. He was speaking about Ma'alois Umoirdois Ka'amar. That what he meant was that if you have a road, guys, hulk up, you have a road, it's 16 amos wide, you have 1 million people going on it, but the road itself is so steep or it's so up or down that it's difficult to walk on it. So maybe the difficulty of walking in an area in itself will take away the status of the Reshus Harabim from that area. Gavaldik. You hear this?
Wait, so how does that connect to the whole country of Eretz Yisrael?
No, he never meant the whole country of Eretz Yisrael. And really, it would be in Babel also, that in Eretz Yisrael, there are certain areas that are very steep. Guys, it's the opposite of Asar Rabim Umavat Lemechitzas. Asar Mechitzas means you have a mechitza, but if people are walking through it, it's ois mechitza. Now we're going in the opposite. You have a Reshus Harabim, but the Reshus Harabim is an area where the Rabbim cannot travel easily. That takes away its status of the Reshus Harabim. Maybe that's what he meant. And you know what? Rav Dimi tells Abaye, ooh, that's good. That's good. He tells them that Karkafna, Rashi teaches, means large-headed person. That was a compliment. Adam Chashuv, Chazisei L'Reishach, I saw your head in between the pillars in the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Yechanan when Rabbi Yechanan was teaching it. And as Tosfos points out, Abaye wasn't alive b'chaye Rabbi Yechanan. But you said so good that it's Keilu you were there when Rabbi Yechanan said it. That's what he meant. And actually, his head being there is not Stam Aguzma, even though he wasn't alive, but like Tosfos, the third Tosfos points out that Abaye was a Talmud of Rabbi. Tosfos says that Rabbi was a Talmud of Rabbi Yechanan. So, your Rebbe was there, you were there with your Rebbe. And Taka Itmanami, that Kyasa Ravin, he clarified, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, even though, again, it's a wide road, 16 amos wide. Let's go with Rashi Tosfos Kiyotze Mitzrayim. But since it's Ma'alois Umordes and it's difficult to walk there, that in itself takes away the status of Reshus Harabim. Why? As we learned in Masechta Shabbos, everything is learned from how we traveled with the flags in the desert. In the desert, like we spoke out in the intro, because of the Anani Yaakov, there wasn't more terrible steep or areas to walk on, up or down. Hashem made nisim for us. So if you have an area that's so dissimilar to the Midbar, it automatically loses its status of Reshus Harabim, and therefore, yet Danny, it doesn't mean Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael happens to be an area relative to Babel that has a lot more mountains. But if there would be an area anywhere in the world where it's difficult to travel there, that loses its status of Reshus Harabim. Now we're going to so we learn two sugyas that go opposite each other. Asar Rabim umavat lemechitzas. Mitzat sheni, if an area is difficult for the Rabim, it's almost like there's a mechitza. It becomes no longer the Reshus Harabim. Now we're going to put both of these things together. So now, one second. From Rava, let's first apply Rabbi Yechanan. This concept about a mechitza that we learned, a mechitza doesn't only have to mean a straight up mechitza, but if you have an area, a mound, but if the incline or the decline is so that in 4 amas, you're going up or down 10 tefachim. We learned that that's viewed not as a horizontal area, that's viewed as a vertical area. If in 4 amas, you go up or down 10 tefachim, that's a wall. So the Rabbim, so you have a wall. On the other hand, the Rabbim boy can boy, but now let's take the din of our Mishnah of Asar Rabbim umavat lemechitzas. People are walking over it. Okay, so let's say there is an area that's surrounded by these mounds, but a road is going over it. Do we say Asar Abim Umavatla Mechitzas? So the Gemara clarifies, Machlekes Tanoim. So the Gemara said, Aliyah the Rabbanon. What did we learn, guys? How come in our Mishnah that the Rabbanon hold that Lo Asar Abim Umavatla Mechitzas like Tiboilach? Why? Hashta Uma Hassan. Hassan is in our Mishnah. By the passive Erois, the highway went through the passive Erois. No mountains, no inclines, no declines. It's called the Nichat Hashmishtei. In other words, there's nothing impeding the people to travel. Yet, Amri Rabbanan, that loy asaramat lemechitza hachi. Here, if you have an area that's surrounded with a mound, and it's difficult to travel up and down these hills, of course the mechitzas are mechitzas. Fakert, the rabbim themselves are being impeded because of the terrain. The loy nichatash mishtei. It's not convenient. Like Kolchheim, that they're not mevatel. Yes, the wall is a wall. Inside this area, you have a Rishus HaYachid. The boya is Aliyah the Rabbi Yehuda Mai. Do we say over there in our Mishnah, since the Nichatash Mishtei, you have Pasiberois, it's on a flat area. So Rabbi Yehuda says if the highway goes through the Pasiberois area, I'm sorry, it's not a Mechitza. Hache, who the Nichatash Mishtei, but maybe over here, by our case, even though there's a highway going over this tail is the taflamet, not in English. The mound, according to Rabbi Yehuda, they're not traveling conveniently. The terrain itself impedes, makes it hard. Rabbi Yechanan is the one that said that in such an area there's no Rishus HaRabim. And therefore maybe or not. So that's the question that we have, Beshitas Rabbi Yehuda, and we're going to try a few times to resolve. So he responds, Amalei Chayavin. Yes, the Mechitzas Bavel, the Mechitzas Batel. Asar Rabim Umavatla Mechitzta. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't differentiate. And he tells him, is there a filo oilen loy bechevel? What happens, Miles, if there's a wall? The only way to go over this mound, it's a wall, is by using a string, a rope. But everyone who goes in that area, they have to go over, they use the chevel. So people are traveling over it, but it's very difficult. Still, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if the rabbim are going over the wall, even though they need a chevel, it's mavatel the mechitza. Guys, that's Bnei Maraim was an area in Eretz Yisrael that was so steep. It was so steep that the road, that people went single file because they were afraid. You know, if I'm going up, I'm going down, and I'm going to lose my balance. I'm going to grab onto you. I'm going to schlep you down with me. It was so steep and narrow, so difficult to travel. That's why in Rosh Hashanah we say in Yom Kippur, we all stand in front of God, so to say, alone, within a minyan, with the Rebbe helping us, but still alone. Yeah, Omalayin, I don't care how difficult of a road it is, if the rabbim go there, Rabbi Yehuda, the Mavatel Mechitz. So the Paskin. Now we're going to try to refute that. It says in Abraisa, Chatzir, Sharabim Nechlasum is really Yitzim Bezu. Guys, any Chatzir that a highway goes to the Chatzir, even though it goes through the Chatzir, there is a impediment by the simple fact that the road minimally becomes narrow by the entrance to the Chatzir. That's the case. So the road goes through a Chatzir, but the fact that it's still a Chatzir, it definitely difficults the people going through. So it says in the Braisa, now there's a Bach's version of reversing the Seder, but the dinim are the same. When it comes to the dinim of Tumah, Safek Tumah, remember, Rishus HaYachid, Midoraisa, Yomachman. Safek Tumah, Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim, we're lenient. All of that is learned from a Soita and Beer, as we learned many times. It's getting late, but just to say the words, that for the din of Safek Tumah, Rishus HaRabim, Safek Tumah, Rishus HaYachid, the criterion of Rishus HaRabim, Rishus HaYachid has nothing to do with Shabbos. It has to do whether it's similar to the case of a Soita, where there were two people together. And if you have an area where there are three people or more, it's already called a Rishus HaRabim. And therefore, you can apply the leniency of Safek Tumah. We can be matir. It's tahar. So it's called a Rishus HaRabim because more than two people are there because the road goes through. But V'negia hilchas Shabbos, reshus hayachid l'Shabbos. Now hold on. Who is this Braisa going according to? Mani, who's the author? Elam, it goes according to the Rabbanon. And the Rabbanon hold that what? That the Aser Rabbim, the Rabbanon hold that lo Aser Rabbim about lemechitzta. So the Gemara says, Pshita, who needed that? Uma in our Mishnah, the Nichat Hashmishtei. There's no impediment. There's no walls of a chutzner stopping the flow of traffic. Still, the Rabbanan say loy asar avat lemechitzta. So over here, where it's going through a chutzner, the loy nichat hashmishtei, which makes it better for the mechitzas, is loy kolchein, that it has a din of a reshus hayachid. And if there was no need to quote that shita if the author is the chachamim. Elamite must be Rabbi Yehuda. And what do we see over here? Clearly that it is a reshus hayachid. It is reshus hayachid, that the Rabbim is not mevatel the mechitzta. You know why? Because it's not nichat hashmishtei. So the word says no. The author of the Braisa is the Rabbanan. There is no chiddush as far as Hilchos Shabbos is concerned. The chiddush, the reason why they wrote this din is to tell you the novelty of the dinam of Tumah, as we just mentioned, that for dinei Tumah and Tara, the definition of reshus hayachid, reshus Rabbim, is not like the way it is for Hilchos Shabbos. It has to do whether the area only holds 2 people or less, reshus hayachid. Any area that you have in it more than 2 people is called for the dinam of Safek Tumah, B'reshus Harabim, B'reshus Harabim. The first white line. It's very simple. It's very similar. Tashema, there's a Mishnah in Taras. Mevuos, a mavoi that are opened, that are in. It sounds like they're in a boyd or in a shichin or in the ma'aros, in pits and ditches and caves. So the din is again, as far as Hilchos Shabbos is concerned, it's called a reshus hayachid. As far as Tumah is concerned, it's called a reshus harabim. So first of all, the Gemara just wants to clarify, but boiros al kadaita, what, there's a mavui in a pit? Of course not. Ela li boiros. So if you have a picture, you can use the picture. I can describe this very easily. We are going, my friends, that a mavui in which becomes permitted to carry as a reshus hayachid is a mavui sasum. A mavui sasum means that you need to have a closure from 3 sides. From 3 sides. What happens if the mavui physically is only closed from 2 sides? One side and the other side chatzeros. Elama, at one of the points where the reshus harabim is connected to the mavui, there is a water pit. And the water pit takes up almost the whole width. Almost, it's shaykh to walk to its sides, less than 3 tfachim. But don't forget a pit, since the pit goes down 10 tfachim and it's wide 4 by 4 tfachim or more, it's a wall. So this should l'chora be considered a 3rd wall, but the Rabbim are walking through. Same question. Also, it's not easy for them to go through. It's similar to this case. So here again, the Braisa says that as far as the din of Tumah is concerned, it's called a Rabbim. As far as Hilchos Shabbos is concerned, right, as a din of a reshus hayachid. And again, who's the author? If it's the Chachamim, it's a reshus hayachid because the mechitza. Well, of course, we already know it from our Mishnah. Again, hashto ma hasam in our Mishnah, the nichat hashmishtei, still amru lo yasra vatlila. So over here, avade, since there is an impediment by the fact that there is a boyd, the nichat hashmishtei is like kolchein. Elalav, it must be Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that asa rabim umavatla mechitzta. Not here. Why not here? Because it's difficult to walk through. Kasha. Mar says no. The author is, by the way, just so if this Braisa will be Rabbi Yehuda, you have to add a detail. Don't forget, according to Rabbi Yehuda, to a 2-walled area is already a reshus hayachid. You don't even need 3 walls. So if, according to the Kasha and the Havamina, that this is Rabbi Yehuda, it must be that take a look at the walls. If you're looking at a picture, that in each wall there's a breach, a big breach. So therefore, you don't even have 2 walls. You need this wall. Say that. Okay, now back over here. The word says no. Lo'olam rabbanan. And the reshus harabim l'tumah yitzrich like we learned before. And the 3rd attempted question, Tashama, it says in a Mishnah, Shvile Beis Gilgal. Guys, Beis Gilgal is an area that's very slopey. So if you have paths that go in the very inclined area, not that many people go there. The reshus hayachid l'Shabbos, mamish like Rabbi Yechanan, right? And reshus harabim l'tumah. Ve'zeu shvilei Beis Gilgal amrei bilantin shir beyanai kol she'ein ha'eved yachal little social chitin. If it's so steep that an eved is unable to take that amount of wheat and to run in front of a officer because it's too inclined, That's called Shvile Beis Gilgal. Now again, money. Again, it's Pshita. Over here, it's hard to walk. So of course it's a Rishus Hayach. It's Rabbi Yehuda, and you see that there is a difference between Nichat Hashmishta or not. So the Gemara says, "Oh, here we have a different answer." Amalei Shvile Beis Gilgal Ka'amrat. Yeshua ben Nun was a Oyev Yisrael, and therefore, when he conquered the land, any area that was very steep, he allocated that area to private properties to begin with. That Amad V'Tikim Lahem, that there were drachim, smaller roads, Saratya highways. We conquered it. People lived there before us. We conquered it from them. So all of those roads called that was an area that belongs to the public. But any road, including Beis Gilgal, was never public to begin with. He gave it over to a yachid. He gave it to the tribes, to whichever area, to whichever family. This is a very important rule. In other words, we're concluding today's sugya that if there is a road that's going through private property, by the fact that the person is able to shut the traffic off when the person is indeed able to do so, that in itself takes away its Rishus Harabim status, which is why it's called a Rishus Hayachid. And therefore it has nothing to do with our Mishnah that's speaking about a bona fide Rishus Harabim. There, again, Machlekes Tanoi, and we are saying that according to Rabbi Yehuda, we always say that Aser Rabim u'Mavatla Mechitzta. God willing to be continued. Good.
Shkoyach.
Danny.
Let's go and tell Mommy it's Puggy Day.